So we've talked about really acknowledging reality, figuring it out, going to other people that have information that we don't have, and getting a clear picture of what reality is, trying to figure out the problem. And in order to truly figure out all the elements of reality, you have to also know where you're going, right?
Yeah.
You have, if you're in this town, and the town you want to be in is directly east, that's a whole different set of problems to figure out than if you want to go directly west.
Sure is.
So, where do I want to go? How do we figure out? How do you figure out where it is that you want to go? If you want to solve the problem, you have to know where you are,
right,
and you have to know where you want to go.
Right. So here's where this comes from. When we acknowledge a problem, we say, "Oh, you're at work someday, or you're sitting at home, you're discussing with some friends about a problem in the world." You know how we do that? Like, "Oh, the world's full of problems," right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, how'd you come up with that? How do you know that's a problem?
That's great.
Okay, and what that comes from, when we see a problem somewhere in our brains, consciously or subconsciously, we're recognizing that what is, like what we talked about, what is different than what we believe it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we might not be conscious of exactly what that is, all the details about that, and that's why we need to work through this process. But that's where this step is coming from, is figuring out what we want. And there's apparently something there of what we want, or else we wouldn't see it as a problem, right? If what is exactly what we think it should be, then we wouldn't see it as a problem, right? So the fact that we've recognized a problem means that we have some semblance of what we believe it should be instead of what it currently is. And that's what we're trying to tease out and really put some detail on. And that's a critical part of this step, is creating detail about what we want.
Yeah.
How good is a vague understanding of what we want?
Yeah, if you don't have a clear understanding, and I go back to the travel analogy just because it brings clarity to me. If you don't have a clear understanding of where you're going, how can you ever really get there, right? I've got other sayings coming to my mind right now, like was that Yogi Berra said, wherever you go, there you are.
It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But where you are may not be where you want to go. The reason why a lot of times we have a problem is because we're all trying to go someplace. Your business, your place of work, is trying to accomplish something. If you are sitting in a chair and your whole goal is to sit in a chair and sit in that chair just in the state that you are, then you probably won't face any problems necessarily unless, like you said, things change.
Right.
Now, if I'm going someplace, problems are often obstacles of getting there.
Yeah.
So we have to know where we're going. So how do we determine exactly, clarity, how do we determine what we actually want?
Yeah. I think it can be a process. Again, oftentimes it becomes more clear talking to other people. Yeah. Because getting that knowledge about what is, like what we talked about, is going to shape how we understand the world, and in turn what we want of the world. I know what I want currently in my life, and the way I believe the world should work in many ways is very different than what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
That has changed dramatically in no small part because of my interactions with other people,
right,
and how I understand the world, what I now understand what is in the world. I like to use the example of poverty in a city like Erie.
Yeah.
I'm still not very knowledgeable about the situation of poverty in Erie, but I'm more knowledgeable than I used to be. And so now what I believe should be the case for surrounding this situation of poverty in Erie is different than what it used to be.
Yeah.
And so, gaining that knowledge, gaining that information has helped me understand where I want to get to in terms of poverty.
Right. And how important is it? Because going back to seeing things from different perspectives, depending on where you are in the economic strata, you're going to see the issue of poverty. Are you in poverty? Your perspective on it is very different than somebody maybe that, is very wealthy.
Right. Absolutely.
Do both of those people have valid input into solving the problem? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very crucial information in solving the issue of poverty. But I want to ask you the question and maybe write this down. What do you really want? Sometimes, we're distracted, like we said in the last video, about motives. What we're actually doing may not be because we really want. We're doing it because we've gotten distracted from what we really want.
Absolutely. And I think there's a specific tool that we can use to dig down into that and get us to that place. I love this idea. I read one time, and unfortunately I can't remember where I read it, but the idea that your second question is often more important than your first question. And I have found this to be true many times. A simple example is, hey, how are you doing today? Default first question, right?
Yeah.
But what do you follow that up with? Is it, oh, okay, well, how about the weather?
Yeah.
Or do you follow it up with, oh, well, have you been thinking about anything important lately?
Yeah.
Like, which one of those questions feels more valuable, more genuine, more authentic, more meaningful? So our second question can be really important. And in this case, our second question should be why.
Yeah.
When you say, what is it that you really want? Okay, I really want this. Why? Okay, answer that question why. And then answer it again. Okay, do that 5 times. This is this idea of the 5 whys. And it forces us to dig down into these hidden layers that we've kind of buried down in our minds oftentimes to get to our most passionate core.
Yeah.
What are the things we care about the most? Why do we really go to work every day? Why do we really save our money in the bank? Why do you really care about your children? What's behind all these things? And persistently asking yourself that question and forcing answers from that will force you to dig down into that. And I think we'll find that we discover something simpler but much more meaningful than we often expect. Right,
and it's interesting. I just had this thought that we were saying to get to your reality of what is. We ask questions, and get to the reality of what you want. We ask the questions, the why questions. The why questions work, for what the problem is as well. I just have to think why is that a problem? I think you'll find that if you ask questions about why you want this and why it's a problem, you're gonna find a meeting in the middle, because
that's right. It's gonna tie those together, and that's why these first 2 pieces, they really do. It's like a mixing bowl. You're putting the flour and the sugar in there at the same time, and you're mixing it up, and that's what we're going to end up with is kind of a solid thing.
You got to get some butter in there.
Get some butter in there, right?
It starts to mush together.
Right. Now in the second half, we're going to bake it.
Oh yeah.
That's when we end up with the cookies. So I don't know. That might be too far.
Okay.
But at this point, we're actually ready to start solving the problem. We've gone through the first half looking at what is and what we want, how these 2 things are connected. Now we're going to take this kind of chunk of knowledge, chunk of information that we have, and we're going to start plugging it in to the problem. So we're going to start looking at that next.
Awesome.
This